Lovji Cama. I'm the chair of the Religious Education Committee of FEZANA. And one of the assignments that the committee had was to develop a curriculum and new teaching methods. Daraius Bharucha is the co-chair of and he has prepared this presentation. So let me just introduce Daraius. Daraius has been very active in the Zoroastrian community for a number of years. He's the past president of the Zoroastrian Society of Ontario and past chairperson of FEZANA's North American Zoroastrian Congress Committee. And as I said, he's the current co-chair of the Religious Education Committee. Daraius has a BA, specialized honors in religious studies, as well as a Bachelor of Education degree. And among his many achievements, he was the recipient of the prestigious Governor-General of Canada's Silver Medal for Academic Excellence. He's a Millennium Scholar and the recipient of the Eva Hallward Prize in Religious Studies, the George Hopton Award in Religious Studies, and the Harry S. Crow Award in History. In 2012, Daraius was the recipient of the Governor-General of Canada's Award for Excellence in Teaching History. Besides that, he has lectured and lecturer and teacher of religion for 17 years and has lectured widely to audiences ranging from young children to adults. And he also, do you still conduct the classes?
No.
You don't?
I don't.
In Toronto. But for many years, he was the chief teacher, and organizer of the religion classes for children in Toronto. He's currently a high school teacher with the York Regional District School Board and lives in Ajax, Ontario, with his wife Dilnaz and children Kaipa and Palau. And so, without further ado, let me just hand the mic over to Daraius, and he will start the workshop.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can all of you hear me? Yeah. Without the mic? Yeah. It'd be much easier if I did this without the mic and perhaps somewhat more intimate, for lack of a better word. If the gentleman at the back, if you could come up here, it would. Yeah, it would be a lot easier. I wouldn't have to project my voice that far.
Is your clip on?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I apologize, guys. I'm reading this for video, that's why.
Okay. Well, I've been told I have to use this, so I generally comply. I ask my students to comply, so, role modeling. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. In terms of this workshop itself, this is not a lecture. Let me start off with that point. So if you expect me to lecture for an hour and a half, you are going to be disappointed. It is a workshop, and after setting you up, I'm going to expect you to engage with each other and with some of the material that I'm going to give you to engage with. In terms of what we're going to do today, this workshop, in a sense, is a continuation of a journey that we started in New York at the last Congress. And it was part of a need that FEZANA felt in terms of actually taking this agenda of education forward. And education primarily for younger people. There's been a lot of talk, and we hear this every 2 years. This is my 10th Congress, about what are we doing for the future, and this, that, and the other. And there are very few really concrete initiatives that come about in terms of addressing the future. And if the future is children, then we need to have a plan for the future. And one plan in terms of continuity of our faith and in terms of continuity of Zoroastrian identity is the understanding and embracing of Zoroastrian identity by young people in North America today. All the years that I've been involved with the teaching of religion, one of the things that I saw was that a majority of the efforts were well-meaning, but perhaps not effective. It is endearing and to be respected, you know, when you have a well-meaning uncle or auntie who sits down and talks to children about stories from the Shahnameh, or colors in pictures of the Ameshaspantas, or, you know, my favorite story about the teacher who walked around and was with a group of 6-year-olds and asked them to draw something about religion. And this little boy in the corner was industriously scribbling away, and she walked up to him and said, "Well, what are you drawing?" He said, "I'm drawing a picture of Aura Mazda." And she said, "Well, nobody knows what Aura Mazda looks like." He said, "They'll know in 5 minutes." So sometimes we need to take our cues from our children. And teaching the 21st century learner in North America is a different kettle of fish from teaching the 20th century learner in India and Pakistan and Iran and all the other traditional homelands. We have to have an approach that is professional. We have to have an approach that engages. We have to have an approach that reinforces identity. And we have to do it in a meaningful fashion. If we do that with a degree of efficiency, we will have at least part of the plan for the future. And based on that, we looked at what can we do. And in New York, we ran a workshop that actually did the basics of what I do every day as a professional, is how to develop a lesson plan that actually makes sense and that is engaging for a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old, depending on who you're teaching. One of the needs expressed at that workshop was, well, what do we teach? And there seemed to be divergent opinions and divergent systems that were being followed in terms of what should we teach. And then somebody said, yes, we have a curriculum. And I said, I'd like to see that. And they emailed me a list of topics. And then there was something else that was emailed to me that was... So it became quite apparent that the idea of what a curriculum should be wasn't there. So that's what sparked this initiative, to say, all right, let's come up with a curriculum document that serves the needs of our community here in North America, but that is geared to the 21st century modern learner, and that is geared to the needs of local communities, because that's the other factor that was a variable in this whole equation. Some people had 200 young people in their classes, some had 2. So how do you make this applicable? And one of the other things, of course, was to say, well, write a curriculum document for children who are 6. Then write a curriculum document for children who are 12. And then do it for children who are 16. You're going to create silos of learning in which there will be overlap to the extent that the treats that you bring for religion class will not be adequate bribes to keep the children in class for a very long time. They will be abandoning that class in droves. I mean, those of you that have been engaged in teaching young children, 6 to 10 is relatively okay because they are still coercible. So you coerce them and you bring them. Then you bribe them when they're there because the only thing that they're looking forward to is the break between the class or the break at the end of the class, because then they'll get their little treat and the ice cream and whatever the deal is, and then they'll get to go home. After the age of 10, the coercion works less and less, which brings us as professionals to think you need to have engagement. You can't rely on coercion and bribery to get children to actually absorb this. The value of this, of course, is transparent to all of us. There is no question about the value in terms of inculcating a Zoroastrian identity. The danger in inculcation is that you can bring in bias and prejudice depending on how this identity or the knowledge base of this identity is handled. And so we try to address that through the curriculum document too. In the field of religious education, there are a variety of models that have come up based on research. And a researcher that I particularly like is a lady called Brenda Watson. She operates in the United Kingdom and had put forward a series of religious education models. The one that I thought was most appropriate as an underlying philosophical method was a model called the confessional model. And that's something that I'm going to kind of expose you to a little bit, the underlying philosophy of this curriculum document, some of its advantages, some of its drawbacks, and how to ameliorate those drawbacks to make it meaningful. So let's get on our journey here. Okay, so the confessional model of religion accepts the fact that religion is response to a revealed truth. This works for our religious principles in terms of the fact that we believe Zoroastrianism is a religion that is based on a revealed truth to a prophet, in this case, whom we all acknowledge as Zarathustra. So that meets the particular criteria. It is important in this model that it promotes the particular religion, so that we are not running a world religions model in our religion class. We are running a Zarathustri religion class. It is promoting that particular faith. It is a model that allows us, at the end of the journey, to be able to say, with some degree of knowledge and a lot of faith, I am a Zarathustri. And be able to defend that and explain that in terms of what that means. Okay? And it is a model that promotes learning both at an affective, which is an emotional, as well as at a cognitive level. So those are some of the features of this confessional model, which is the kind of underlying philosophy of the curriculum. The benefits, it is to nurture children within a particular faith system. It is undergirded by the religious principles of that particular faith, in our case, our Zoroastrian faith. It focuses on teaching the religion and not about religion. And once again, once we meander into that, then we are running a general world religions class. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we're running a Zoroastrian religion class. And most importantly, this model advocates that you teach religion straight up. And what that essentially means is, as a teacher, it is your responsibility to provide and inform what the tenets and doctrine of that religion say, without adding your own flavor, bias, your own prejudices, or perhaps, and most dangerously so, your own interpretations of things that you personally believe may be right or true. Okay. The model does have its drawbacks, and here are some of the drawbacks. In a secularistic milieu, the teaching of religious education, it is said, should be help people come to their own commitments, rather than start off from the point that says, you're a Zarathustri. Let's use that as a starting point. I think if we're running a Zarathustri religion class, that's a good starting point. Okay? What that means is the journey. Okay? The model does not take seriously the rights of autonomy. Because if you start from that point, you are a Zarathustri and nothing but a Zarathustri, then your autonomy to be able to choose and explore Buddhism, for example, etc., is somehow you're deprived from that. Okay? It makes the assumption that religions provide adequate answers to some of the moral dilemmas and ethical dilemmas that we face, without perhaps exploring the fact that religion can be dangerous. In fact, religion can be highly destructive, as we know from the world around us, in the way in which it is employed. And if one is blinkered, then one can narrow perspectives. So those are some of the drawbacks as opposed to some of the advantages. How would we overcome those drawbacks? Yes, go ahead.
Is it okay if I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
So if I understood you correctly, the assumption is the students come into the class and they're going to be Zoroastrian.
Well, the assumption is, yes, they're there in a sense to inculcate, nurture, and promote their Zoroastrian identity.
So the reason I'm questioning that is because to me, aesthetically is when they actually choose. So I can't accept these children into my class assuming they're Zoroastrians. I feel like the journey is what I'm taking them through such that they may choose to become a Zoroastrian when they have their aesthetic.
Yes, but our starting point would be that they're interested in some form of being in some aspects of Zoroastrian identity, right? And the point of being able to choose is where you would start engaging 21st century learners, and we're going to get there, okay? So, all right, so overcoming some of these challenges with the confessional model. In my opinion, there's 3 ways in which you can do it. You do it through developing critical thinking skills, you do it through developing problem-solving skills, and you do it through developing the ability in students to transfer skills between contexts. These 3 areas are generally known as higher order thinking skills. Droning on about a wonderful story from the Shahnameh, or telling children about what is happening in the Gathas, and this is my biggest bugaboo because I've heard endless amount of people talk about the Gathas, and then I ask them to show me the Gathas, and that's when the fumbling and the hedging and hemming and hawing starts. And I was like, so can we find the document that is called the Yasna perhaps as a starting point? And then I get looks of confusion, and that's when I know I don't want to pursue that conversation anymore. But critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and transference of skills to new contexts must be part of what we do to engage and build identity. And this goes to the heart of what you were saying. How do we provide choice? Okay? You provide choice through developing criticality of thinking. You provide choice to enable the student in your class to be able to make decisions based on the information that they have. They can't make decisions for them or for themselves if you've already prejudiced the decision in the beginning. Right? If you presented material as saying, this is a reductive, regressive way of doing things, we don't do this anymore, that sort of stuff, you've already biased the deal. There's no choice at that stage. At an 8-year-old stage, they're going to absorb that. They're like little sponges. They are going to absorb your biases and your prejudices, and that is why it's important to teach it straight up. Okay? But then teach them how to think critically so they make the choices for themselves. That's what's important for a 21st century learner, to be able to come to their own cognizant awareness of what their faith and identity means to them, to be able to look at the material that is in front of them and to be able to make decisions, to be able to apply problem-solving skills to challenges without having the problem solved for them on the basis of what has already been established, okay? To be able to take skills of research, inquiry, and communication from what they've been taught to different contexts, and you'll be equipping them to be much more than Zoroastrians. You'll be equipping them to be efficient functioners in our society at large. 2 other things that are vitally necessary together with higher order thinking skills is that you must engage. Coercion and cookies are good till they're 8 or 10. But if you engage, you will have lifelong learners. And engagement doesn't mean edutainment. Engagement doesn't mean that you come up in a clown suit because it's going to keep the children engaged for the 45 minutes that you're there. Engagement talks about actually getting that child into what they're doing. Engagement is, in a sense, golf metaphor. It's going from the tee to the cup, and that journey in between is what engagement is all about. Okay? Being interested in using the right club and knowing how to do it, interested in using the driver when it has to be used, finding out what it does, that is what engagement is. And if you can do that through inquiry-based, exploratory, and authentic learning, you will have students who are engaged, rather than just talk to them for 45 minutes. They're not engaged. They've tuned out at 15 minutes. Adults start tuning out at about 30. Johan and I have a 45-minute span, but that's because it's been beaten into us. All right. The other part, of course, is knowledge. And again, here with the knowledge piece, teach knowledge straight up, ladies and gentlemen. Really, 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 please. We have a plethora of knowledge about Zoroastrianism that is out there. Teach skills of discernment in terms of being able to detect bias. And then use the knowledge in terms of what has been determined without corrupting it beforehand. We do that a lot. Half the problems that most adults fight about, divisive religious issues, all this kind of nonsense, would evaporate if we followed a model that allowed people and actually encouraged them to be able to think for themselves on the basis of knowledge that was provided straight up, and that they had a curriculum or a spectrum of learning or a program that equipped them with all the pieces that they needed to have. You wouldn't have a problem.
Just the presentation of the knowledge can be biased.
Yes, and that is my whole point, Lovji.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely.
How do you guard against that? I mean, how
Well, this
do
is
you
where
guard against that?
Well, this is where, as a teacher, you have to be engaged in what you are trying to do too, right? So you have to look at where you're getting that knowledge from, what sources you are consulting. You have to offset pieces of knowledge against each other, perhaps, to try and discern what is actually the piece of knowledge and what is the opinion that has been attached to it, right? So it is a journey for religious education teachers to be able to do it. Teaching religion is a very complex task. It's not easy. We seem to think it is very easy, and then we screw up when we think it is easy. Then we run into all kinds of challenges, and we wonder why it's not working. The teaching of religion is complex. It takes skill, it takes effort, it takes dedication, it takes knowledge. All the kind of things that you want your students to develop, as a teacher, you need to be able to model them first. You need to be doing it. If I cannot understand what critical thinking skills are, if I cannot detect bias, if I cannot understand what it means to teach straight up, I'll never be able to do it with my kids, right? So that's the part where we need to train ourselves to be able to do it, and that's the whole idea of these workshops, etc. Okay, that segues to the curriculum actually quite well. What is the guiding principles here in this curriculum? Inculcating and developing in students an awareness of their Zarathustri identity. And again, I've been very cautious about the words that I've used here in terms of inculcating an identity, okay? Inculcating and developing does not mean prejudicing and biasing. Inculcating and developing means exposing and getting them the ability to be able to think, okay? Allow students to explore and make meaning of their religious component of their identity through a process of self-awareness. And let me disabuse you of the notion, if you think 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds cannot think, I have news for you, ladies and gentlemen. 13 and 14-year-olds can think. In fact, they can think more critically than most adults can because they haven't been prejudiced to a level already that most adults have. So they will ask you the questions, and the critical thinking questions, the how and why questions. As adults, we are equipped to give the what and where. What did Zarathustra do? Where did he do it? We're good at answering those. But when that child in the class says, well, why did Zarathustra do this? Which is a brilliant question. I've seen people struggle. Yeah? And that's critical thinking. Going away from those facile answers to equip that child to be able to say that. Right? The standard answer I've heard to this was, Zarathustra was a prophet. God told him to do this. That's not engagement. Okay? Engagement is to say to that child, well, why do you think? What do you believe might have motivated him to do it? How would Zarathustra have responded if he was here today in our world bringing this message out to people? Why would he be motivated? If you were Zarathustra, how would you be motivated, and why would you be motivated to do this? Promote the thinking rather than trying to squash it. Okay? All right. And of course, encourage them to be reflective thinkers so that they can develop a rich and full understanding of the world around them. Try to make sense of all the chaos and madness that we see. Try to be able to process it and come to some definitive conclusions about it in terms of their own self-awareness. All right. So I'm going to get you to work. That's the lecture part of this. Now is the engagement part of this for you. I expected somewhere between about 20 to 30 people, but I think we're a lot more than that in this room. And can I trouble you, Bina? So I'm going to give you a copy of this curriculum document. Just so that you know, if you do not get a copy and want a copy and start getting frantic about a copy, this will be posted on FEZANA's website as of January. So you can download a copy, as many copies as you choose, etc., etc. Okay, just as this is being distributed, some ideas about the curriculum so you understand this document. It is a document that deals with a program of learning from 6 to 16. So it covers that entire spectrum. There are no separate silos in terms of what you should learn at a 6-year-old age and what you should learn at an 8-year-old age. You get to determine how you are going to employ this document for your particular demographic, for your particular group, in your particular community. So in Toronto, we have, or we had at least, 120 kids in our religious education program. They ranged in age from 6 to 14. What I want to see in that child is entering the program at 6 years of age, leaving the program at somewhere between 14 to 16 years of age, and through that journey, having covered the topics in the curriculum. You don't have to do the whole curriculum in 6 classes. What you have to do as a team in your own location is to decide how you are going to employ elements of this curriculum document for your particular age group. And we're going to practice that today. Okay? That's part of the workshop piece. So what I want you to do is build a program. And how are we going to build a program? You're going to work in groups. You are going to look at that curriculum document, and then I'm going to pass these around. Essentially, this is a matrix. The curriculum is set up with 6 strands of learning. Within each strand are overall expectations and specific expectations that you would use. What you need to do in designing a program is to look at the overall expectations within each of the 6 strands and decide which of these expectations would work at what particular age level based on the group that you have, based on the children that you have in your community. So you have that choice and flexibility of designing the program. And the intent is to think of it in a way in which to say the child enters the program at 6 and leaves the program at 16. And through that continuum, you are going to cover the program. You are not going to cover it in the 1 year. You are not going to cover it between the age of 6 and 8. You are not going to teach them everything they need to know about Zoroastrianism between the age of 10 to 14. You're going to have to start with the building blocks and work through it. One of the things that is really important is the last strand there. It is about inquiry and communication skills. And you want to use inquiry and communication skills from the beginning. At a very simplified level, perhaps earlier, and a more sophisticated level later. You don't have to send 6-year-olds off on a random search of Zarathustra journals and articles written by scholars. You can develop inquiry skills through simple techniques. Present them with a question, provide a book or a set of books from which they could find the answer to the question that you have provided, and let them go on that journey of inquiry through the material to extract the answer. When they have found what they believe is a reasonable answer, that's when you discuss it, not give them the answer. The trick is to be the guide at the side, not the sage on stage all the time. You guide them in that journey. Let them find the answer. Let them go through exploratory processes even at that early age. You can do it with flashcards. I don't care what method you use, but build in that inquiry. Then build in the communication piece. Ask them to talk about how they found that answer, what that answer means to them. And then ask them to apply it to real-world context. And you will build those skills from an early age, so that by the time that child is 14 or 16, your Zoroastrian class would look like a well-run school in the 21st century. Hopefully, this is what happens in most schools. At least that's what I would like to believe. That they're equipped, that it's really no different, that you do this stuff in school, and then you can increase the level of sophistication in terms of what they're doing with inquiry skills and so on and so forth. But you have to teach those right from the beginning. You can't wait till they're 12 and 14-year-olds to introduce the idea of inquiry-based learning. It's hard to do at that stage. You do inquiry-based learning right from the beginning. So you don't talk. You let them talk. You tell them what the task is. That is the talking piece that you do. Okay? All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to distribute these two. So can I trouble you, Abdin? Sure.
One for everybody?
Yeah, more or less. Okay. How many of you currently teach in religious education programs in your local communities? So we have 1, 2. Okay. Oh, we have quite a few people. All right. So those of you that already teach, can you please stand up? I don't mean to single you out. I'm just going to do the groupings on the basis of this. Okay. Are you all in different programs? So it's not like everybody standing up teaches in New York or something like that, right? Okay. So you're going to be, in a sense, group leaders for your groups. And you are going to use your actual demographics in your community to start looking at this document and start deciding with a group of people. So when you start discussing it, you are going to share how many kids you have in terms of your program, what their age range is, what the frequency of attending classes is, and then how you could employ that document or this document and create a program from the age of 6 to 16. So the lines that you see at the side are basically a check-off grid that says, we will use this overall expectation at the age of 6. We will use this one at the age of 12. We will use this one at the age of 14. And so you develop a continuum of learning in your program. Everybody with me on this? Okay. So we're going to divide this arbitrarily. Everybody in this row is going to work with this lovely lady. Cool? Treaty? Okay. And my dear, your name is? Pearl? Okay, so everybody here is going to work with Pearl, okay? And everybody out there, that gentleman, your name is, sir? Armand. Okay, so everybody out there is going to work with Armand, and I guess we have more teachers at this stage than we have people working. So maybe we can split this group up a little bit. Okay. So, Yuan, I'm going to separate you from your mom. I hope there are no anxiety issues. All right. So, why don't you work with these people here? Okay. And what I want you to do is try and attempt this during this time frame. We will share your thoughts and discussions and what challenges you may or may not have experienced while doing this, and discuss it as a large group. That will be our kind of sum up. And the one thing I would like you to do as we get closer to the end is to have an exit card or your ticket out of the door. I allowed those people to leave because they fled, but the rest of you are not able to leave until you have completed this, and I would like you to complete this exit card and hand it in. You do not necessarily have to put your name on it, but you could if you wanted to. If you need to be in communication with me regarding all this kind of stuff, it would be great if you put your email on it. If I don't know you already and I don't have your email, and that way I have an email list of the people and can communicate with them. Capiche? Okay, so that would be your exit card. There's pads and pens here that you can use. Yes, please. Okay. Yes. Right.
Now, I have children who are young, and parents do sit through class. We meet once a month. Now, hear me out with this scenario, that parents are there influencing the child as well. So, in this case, how strongly can I present my point? In some cases, I may be going against what the children have.
The first thing you would do is boot the parents out. Okay, that's what I would do. It's a religion class for children. It's not a religion class for parents.
Partially the parents sit in because they want to learn too.
I know, but this is what happens, right? And the moment you start doing that, what happens is the prejudice factor takes over. Then it's the, but you know, Pearl, you said so and so. Sorry, it's not Pearl, right?
Okay. No, Anaita.
Anaita, okay. Anaita, but you know, my Bapaji had said this to me, and you don't want that.
Right.
Okay, because they are going to bring their 20th century learning methodology into what you are trying to up the ante with. So you say that to the parents up front too. Your child is safe with me in this room. You can go sit in the next room. If the child has a meltdown, I'll call you. Okay?
Right.
Thanks, bye.
Okay.
Right?
I actually have to leave, but I wanted to just get your email address because I teach the children in London.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that you guys do so much, and maybe we could do some like knowledge sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if I could just take your contact.
Do you have a pen?
Yes, I've got a pen.
I guess I'm in
That's my name, right? So you know Malcolm?
Malcolm, yeah. Yes, I know Malcolm.
Say hello from me.
Okay, I will do. Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Make sure I have the right understanding. You want us to put what right here, what grade we teach what?
Yes. So how would you group your classes, right? So let's say you have 10 children in the program, and you know, the 2 of them are from 6 to 8. So let's say they're divided synchronously to make this easier, right? So you're going to look at the document and say, okay, what of this will I be teaching a 6-year-old? What of this will I be teaching a 12-year-old? But what you've got to make sure is that through that range from 6 to 16, you are covering all of it.
Oh,
Okay?
What we are doing currently or what we propose?
No, what you propose. How you would reorganize this program based on this curriculum document. Yeah. Okay. What, you're not working? Yeah, you can work with Johan.
This is great. I don't think even academics do it like this. Where's the information?
Well, the information is the next piece, right? And just as we're teaching teachers to teach students about being discerning information providers, we have to perhaps create sources of information that have been pre-discerned, okay? You get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, but that's the trick,
Right. See, the knowledge is one piece, right? The knowledge is simply one piece of the pie in terms of educating people. The identity is the goal, right? So if you can provide the knowledge through inquiry and critical thinking, then it's perfect, right? So sometimes giving them a source that is biased at a later stage and saying, okay, here's an interpretation, this is a translation, this is an interpretation. Find me the bias, right?
Yeah, but the basic philosophical
Underpinnings?
problematic here implies that there is such a thing as a truth.
Well, that's the confessional model, right? And that, well, this is the truth of Zarathustra's message. You separate resources, right? And if you want to, we'll work together on it. Yeah, it'll be fantastic.
I spent the last 7 years working on this big companion. For all the world's experts, like the world's expert in law writing about law, the world's expert in ritual writing about rituals. You know, when I read that, I mean, it's designed for university level.
Correct.
When I look at it, I see the same problem at that high level. The educator, that is the individual writing the chapter for someone who's in some other field or who doesn't know Zoroastrianism. They don't know how to communicate their internal knowledge
To them.
because it's the same essential sort of
But that's why teaching is a very complex profession, right? And the challenge with teaching, as I found, is that everybody who's ever had an education thinks that they know what it is like to be able to teach. And I keep telling them, I've been to a doctor when I've had a stomach ache and he's given me, you know, whatever. This doesn't mean I've become a doctor, that I understand you take this pill for that stomach ache, right?
I've gone to some of the religious education classes in Boston, in San Jose, in LA, and things. So not as much as you have, obviously, much less. But listen to them talk, and what I hear from as an academic is a watered-down version of the 19th century scholarship.
Correct. Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, that's very interesting. Somewhere along the way, Zoroastrian community law never kept pace with what we as the professionals did. Maybe we got too technical.
But again, try to separate yourself from the lay Zoroastrian, right? The lay Zoroastrian is not really cognizant with his faith. No? They have a very shallow level understanding of the faith, but they have very acute developed opinions. Okay, so that's the paradigm that I want to change. Yeah, I want to develop well-equipped kids with well-developed thinking skills to be able to discourse and debate about Zoroastrianism from a position of knowledge rather than from a position of ignorance, right? Oh.
Pleasant duty that I have to do. Before we disband after doing this, I have a very pleasant duty, and since while you're still here, on behalf of the Congress, I want to give Daraius this little gift for his efforts. So, well done. All right, so more meaningful would be the charity. He doesn't want
Oh,
Okay. Yes.
He's on that.
That's perfect. I guarantee you nobody's gone through the entire document. It would have been impossible. But just that's part of the sharing that I'd like to hear too, that you found that the document was complex and that you didn't have the time to be able to go through it, but here were your thoughts about the areas that you did go through, right? So I'm looking for sharing. I am not looking for globally earth-changing insights. Just what was your journey as you were discussing this in your group? Just share some insights.
okay, so the first part of our group discussion was we didn't quite understand the question. Okay. And then we discovered that how these items on these pages, at what age, what item would be appropriate. And one was that we all very much appreciate both sides of these pages. We do have teachers who teach our children. Especially I come from one of the biggest Zoroastrian associations in the world, which is California Zoroastrian Center. So this will be very helpful to our teachers. And another item that we all agreed on is that it is good to start at early age with indoctrination, just instead of getting into philosophical discussions and instead of making sure that the children can live the religion. And something we discussed, something like Shahnameh, that you really teach Shahnameh from the age of 4 to 40. You start as a story, and then you can explore on it and open it up and explore on Shahnameh, for instance. Did I miss anything else? That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Aban, your group, perhaps?
Our group leader, she's the teacher. We're all interested people.
That's wonderful.
So I'll tell you what we loved was the standardization of the document. And what we saw, that there is a possibility for each age group to be doing what Arman said, you know, like the Shahnameh stories, we can go down the line. What we need, your next step, is to have a list of resource materials so that there is a standardization of the resource materials that follows what we're about to teach, and every child doesn't go to Google and look up Wikipedia, and then we wonder if it's right, the thing what it was. And the third thing, some of the differences were not clear, and I understand we didn't have that much time, but as adults, as parents, we thought you should have another group for parents so we could learn these things as well too. So it doesn't have to stop, or it doesn't have to start at age 4 and end at age 16. As you evolve, I think it's very important. For me, as an adult, late adult, I have more time now to devote to it, and I need to learn. So I wanted to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Your group here, ladies. Pearl?
Our group, we were very fortunate. We have a lot of young kids, I would say, because I'm a little older. And it was very nice to kind of get their perspective, because having been a teacher for such a long time, I think my perspective, my class curriculum has been my perspective, what I think the kids need to know. So it was good to hear from all of them that their perspective. So this document really helped us understand that. So I would definitely go back and revise the curriculum that I have, speaking for myself. The other thing I kind of learned from here is I had the fortune of learning how she conducts her classes in California, and what are the methods they follow and the media that they use. And the only thing that I kind of feel like I did not get an answer to was, I find that it's very hard to maintain continuity because parents do not necessarily bring their kids for each and every class. And as teachers, when a new kid who has missed a class comes to the class suddenly and you're kind of continuing from the topic where you left last time, that kid kind of loses track of what's going on and kind of starts losing interest. That's what I kind of wanted to learn from this class, and I hope that next time we kind of have some kind of a solution for that, how we can kind of advocate. And she had a very good idea that she does go and post it to the Yahoo group so parents can catch up and things like that. So those kind of techniques would also help. Anything else that we discussed? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing. The group here, Roynton, your group?
Okay. I guess you all have said the same thing in the sense that this document that has been put together is pretty neat, and it says that as to some of the subjects at what age you would educate them to make it interesting for them. For example, you would not start with the Shahnameh when they are about 4 years old. They don't even understand what Shahnameh is. So you need to make it entertaining for them to know what religion you, why do you think you're a Zoroastrian? What do you think, why you are a Zoroastrian, and what have your parents told you about? Because at that stage, they have no idea. So we have to make it very entertaining for them. And some of them then talk about all the different religions. I think that should be discussed at a later stage. If they don't know about their own religion, how would they be able to distinguish other religions and how we compare? So that has to come at a later stage, much later. And make it more interesting. Now, I'm guilty of the fact that we did not teach our children, or we were not able to impart the knowledge. And we are trying to learn ourselves now that we're adults. And you said, Pearl, right? Aban. You mentioned that we have time now. It's more interesting. We can talk about it more with our grandchildren and all.
Sure. Shiraz?
I'm going to sing. Just to add, I think one of the other things, because when we were grouping them, we had like one was preschool, number 2 was early elementary, number 3 was grades 3 to 5, number 4 was middle school, number 5 was high school. So when we were kind of going down and looking at least in that first part on the topics, my dad brought up a good point in that, you know, some kids don't start at age 6. They might come in at, you know, maybe 12 years old. And so there are certain fundamentals that we think should constantly be related back to. So for example, you know, looking at summarizing key bio information about Zarathustra, including birth stories, obviously that's something we think you can start at a young age, but you want to keep drawing back to that even as they get older, and you're kind of expanding your knowledge into other areas.
Okay, thank you. And the last group, Peter?
So I think the thing we found most useful is that everything in this document was very specific. You had specific things that you could teach and specific examples. And so then we're able to actually think, well, how would you go about teaching this to a 4-year-old versus an 8-year-old? And you can compare it to similar things that they're actually doing in school. And so it allows you to easily categorize things. The other thing is, as the other groups found, we found everything almost runs straight through to the highest age group. And the question is where to start introducing each concept, at what point are they ready for that? The other idea we had that we thought would be useful is if you structured a wiki page or something around this where people can deposit information or course material for each of the topics, because there's a lot of repetition in terms of finding material, producing slides, and it would help a lot, I think, if there was a place that people could could look at each of these points and, well, what material have people come up with? Is there something for a 4-year-old to teach the Shahnameh, or is there only good material at 16 or 18?
Right.
I'll just make a point about this, what you just said. There is a website that is linked to FEZANA, which is called ZORELED.com. All right? It's Zoroastrianreligiouseducation.com. And there is material on that, so you can try. You may not be happy with it. If you are happy with it, use it.
Yeah, well, the idea...
And also, the invitation to teachers to send in the material, we can then put it on that site. Yeah. So other teachers don't have to repeat what you already did. Yeah. So that's the idea about that.
Yeah, no, exactly something like that. I mean, yeah, Wiki automates the process. But
we do have that zoreled.org site. Not org.com. It used to be org. Can you repeat that? ZORELED.
All right.
.org. All right. I'm sorry, .com.
Okay, so just to quickly sum up, we've got exactly 2 minutes left. First of all, thank you all for sharing, and there was a variety of different perspectives in terms of the sharing. One of the things that I do want to encourage you to do is to look at the specific expectations in the curriculum document. Don't just use the matrix sheet, the planning sheet as your curriculum document. That's just a planning sheet that helps you to design a program that meets the needs of your local demographic, okay? That's all that sheet does. That's not a curriculum document. The curriculum document itself gives you a lot more detail in terms of how to break that overall expectation down. Don't be caught up in the fact that one overall expectation must be only taught at a particular age. Look at the specific expectations under that overall expectation, and you can address some of those specific expectations at 6 years of age and others at 14. That gives you the flexibility of designing the program to meet the needs of your local community. But what we want to do, the bigger idea, is to say, if we do this properly, down the road, we will have an aware group of young Zoroastrians. That's the key, okay? So in terms of challenges with behavioral patterns, attendance patterns, there are lots of tools that you can put into place to ameliorate that. Somebody joining the class late, there are strategies that you can use to get them caught up with the kind of basic building blocks that perhaps they may not be equipped with. Somebody who's missing a class for a variety of different reasons, I don't know, the hockey game's on or something, how do you go about it? But those are strategies to cover and consolidate. And there's a variety of different things that you can do there. It's something that we can definitely discuss down the road as teachers and share, right? What I want to do essentially is facilitate this. I'm a great believer in the fact that there is a wealth of knowledge and experience among people. And my job is not to tell you how to do it. My job is to facilitate that. So I want to take that from all of you and kind of say, okay, how do we facilitate this? How can I bring everybody's experience to bear, their ideas to bear, so that it works for all of us, right? There's a variety of different things that we could come up with. One of the other things, of course, that just as the last workshop spawned this workshop, perhaps this workshop will spawn another one, in terms of looking at some form of coherent resource development. And again, if we're going to do that, we have to do it in a very sophisticated fashion, because this is the takeaway that will work for a long period of time. So when we build those resources, we have to build them in an edu-professional way rather than just randomly posting a story, okay? Just posting a resource doesn't really do anything. You have to equip people with what do I do with this resource? So in essence, you're going to be creating a teaching manual that works around those resources. Now, it doesn't mean that that resource can only be used in that way, but looking at a variety of different strategies in the way in which that resource can be used, you can mix and match. Just like you're doing with the curriculum document, you can mix and match and pick that. So there's a resource, one type of lesson plan, but you may choose to use this strategy with a different resource, and so on and so forth. To make that effective, it would have to be, to really make it effective and keep it straight up, it would have to be a partnership between education and academia, okay? To provide it with some degree of validity in terms of saying, okay, academia has its role, and it's a wonderful role in terms of the fact that it, as an educator, provides me with the tools or the resources to use. As an educator, I enhance academia by taking that material and disseminating it and making it valid and relevant to the lives of the community. So if we're going to look at resource development, we have to do some kind of partnership between academia and the educator, the high school educator field. And perhaps that's an avenue that we will explore as we go further. So who knows, our next workshop in Vancouver, since really I have nothing to do with my life, we may develop a teaching resource which would also be a building block and something that people can use, and it becomes a kind of go-to document. We're not trying to write the Bible on Zoroastrian teaching. It's not our intent.
And it should not be.
And it should not be it. Our intent is to provide the building blocks and to provide flexible building blocks, but legitimate building blocks that people can use and understand how to use and then actually employ. That's the trick. I can't come and teach in your local communities on a regular basis. Even if I was provided with all the money to fly to Chicago and to fly to Houston, I can't do it. You have to do it. That's the Ashavan part that I'm entrusting you with, right? So that's what you need to take away and say, okay, we've got these building blocks, let's make them work for us. And it's not, you will only teach this or you will only teach it in this particular way. It's, here's a model. Here is a professional model. And I would be quite comfortable in saying that. Here is a professional curriculum document, the first that FEZANA has ever produced. The first professional curriculum document I submit to you that has been produced for a religious education program anywhere. How do we build from here? How do you build from here? Thank you.